You know, I have been trying to understand the game plan of our president. You see, the Democrat Party that he represents has been killed in the polls. They're decimated. They've lost the House. They've lost the Senate. They have lost any number of governorships. They have lost close to 1,000 members of state legislatures. In other words, the whole electoral map just makes them look totally in disarray. But Obama has a game plan. He's trying to do something. We've got a guest today who's going to tell you what the game plan is. It has nothing to do with the fact that his party is in disarray. You'll find that very interesting. But right now, both Republicans and Democrats in Congress have a message for the president. It's time to get tough with ISIS. Republicans warn that the president hasn't taken strong enough action in Syria, leaving the door wide open for the Islamic radicals to launch their deadly attacks.
Those warnings come as investigators say they're virtually certain that a terrorist bomb did destroy that Russian jetliner. And now the FBI is joining the investigation, too. Dale Hurd has the story.
Investigators are 90% sure the noise heard in the final seconds of a cockpit recording aboard the Russian plane that crashed in Egypt was an explosion caused by a bomb, according to a report from Reuters. 224 passengers and crew died. The Islamic State in the Sinai says it did it. Both parties in Congress say President Obama needs to step up attacks against ISIS. Republicans are blaming the president's strategy for allowing ISIS to spread death and destruction across the Middle East, and for allowing Russia and Iran to lead the fight.
The sad fact is, because we've had a failed policy and failed leadership, now we're having to rely on the Russians and the Iranians to go into Syria to fight and destroy ISIS. And that's kind of where we are today. And I think, again, it's this weakness invites aggression.
Congressman Peter King says the U.S. needs boots on the ground to fight ISIS.
This has to be an all-out effort. I don't think the president has done enough as far as having the forces on the ground that are necessary to make the air attacks more effective.
And Democrat Dianne Feinstein, vice chair of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, warns the U.S. cannot avoid a war with ISIS, telling NBC, "We will fight them now or we will fight them later." Feinstein says she's very worried about repeated attempts to bomb American passenger planes, and says the U.S. must do more than just the roughly 50 Special Forces members now operating in Syria. And if the president takes the advice from Democrats and Republicans, the United States could be sending more military to take on ISIS fighters. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Well, it doesn't stop there. In other news, President Obama has also taken heavy criticism for another one of his moves in the Middle East. That strange nuclear deal he made with Iran. And today, for the first time since the U.S. agreed to that deal, he's also meeting with a man that he seems to have snubbed. He's cozied up to the Iranians. He's cozied up to the dictators down in Cuba. He has snubbed somewhat al-Sisi, who's our friend in Egypt, and yet he seems to be a friend of radical terrorists. But Israel has been a staunch ally for many years, and now finally he's going to meet with Benjamin Netanyahu once again in Washington. Ephraim Graham has that story.
Pat, tensions over the nuclear deal with Iran are still high between the two countries. It's a deal Netanyahu and others across the political spectrum in Israel deeply oppose because they see it as a threat to Israel's existence. Today is the first time the president and the prime minister have met face to face in more than a year, and expectations are not high, with U.S. officials downplaying the chance of a peace deal between the Israelis and Palestinians before President Obama leaves office just 14 months from now. Republican presidential candidate Ben Carson says he is the target of, quote, biased media. He appeared on all 3 Sunday morning shows to defend stories in his autobiography. The website Politico published a report Friday that said the Carson campaign admitted he made up a story about a West Point scholarship. Carson's campaign denied that and called the story a hit job. As more information emerged, Politico softened its story, but says it is standing by its reporting. As for Carson, he says he has raised $3.5 million last week thanks to the biased media coverage. And he, along with conservative critics, ask why the media didn't scrutinize President Obama so closely in 2008. Pat?
Listen, I know what it's like to be under the Democrat attack machine. They called my college to check on my transcript of all the courses I had taken in college, what my grades were, and the whole thing. They did everything they could to possibly find some misstatement or something that was inaccurate so that they could come up with a big criticism. And it in this case, didn't emerge because my grades were pretty good, and they didn't want to brag about that. But in terms of Ben Carson, it is an American success story. He came out of poverty, was the son of a single mother living in the ghetto of an urban area, condemned, if you will, to poverty and desperation. And out of that, he wound up going to an Ivy League school, going to a medical school, graduating, and then becoming the head of pediatric neurosurgery at one of the most prestigious universities in the nation. He has received over 50 honorary doctorates. So he says something when he was a kid. He thought a military man, was offering a scholarship to West Point. So that was it. And he thought maybe he'd talked to General Westmoreland. Maybe he had, maybe he hasn't. I've talked to Westmoreland, and it's no big deal. So I don't know if it was for Carson or not. But nevertheless, who cares? Who cares if some teenager forgets the facts of what happened 50 years before? Who cares? And but the Politico and these left-wingers are going to do everything to hurt Carson. And Carson says, thank you very much, as he pockets $3.5 million of additional contributions because people are disgusted with the attacks of the left on the people that they love. Ephraim?
Pat, the government's debt is actually far higher than officials say it is. That is the warning from David Walker, the former head of the Government Accountability Office under Presidents Clinton and George W. Bush. The debt is officially $18 trillion, but Walker says it is actually about $65 trillion when you add in unfunded government liabilities for Social Security, Medicare, civilian and military pensions, and more. The Hill reports Walker made his remarks on an AM radio show in New York called The Cat's Roundtable. Walker points out that a growing national debt hurts the economy, and he says that Americans have, quote, lost touch with reality when it comes to spending. Pat?
Well, we all have. I mean, I can't comprehend that much money. I mean, if you add it up, take it about, I mean, we've got to have some measures of what it is, but how much you'd have to spend every day, burn money up. I mean, they have spent so much money, they have obligated so much. These politicians have been completely and utterly out of control, whether they're Republican or Democrat, doesn't make any difference. There is no, if you want to stop funding, it takes an incredible effort. If you want to spend more money on a project, it's the easiest thing in the world. You can talk some politician into signing off on the bill and going on it, and you get the money. No problem getting more money, terrible problem stopping spending. And that's the way it is. Well, my dear friend and the man that's been honored across this nation has had another birthday. I remember I was working with him in New York, and they said, well, this is the last crusade. Well, that was in the 1950s, and he's been going strong ever since, and he seems to be indefatigable and you know, he's not capable of being destructive. And so we salute the man that Ephraim's going to tell you about.
Indeed we do. Evangelist Billy Graham turned 97 years old Saturday, and he has just finished his latest book. It is called Where I Am. It deals with heaven and hell. The North Carolina Museum of History opened up a new exhibit that chronicles Graham's life. The exhibit, called North Carolina's Favorite Son, Billy Graham and His Remarkable Journey of Faith, explores his life as well as 7 decades of ministry. That exhibit will continue until next July. Happy birthday, Billy Graham. Pat?
We all say happy birthday, and I'm amazed. 97, he just keeps on going. You know, he's defying all the odds. I remember being with him at the Berlin Wall. We had a lovely time together and had lunch together. He was just so strong then, but he just keeps on going. But we love him. The nation loves him, and they're talking about a statue of him in the Capitol Rotunda representing North Carolina, and I think he would be a good one, Terry.
You know, one of the great things about Billy Graham, I think, is that his message never changed. It was year after year the same.
With all the acclaim and all the honors and all the famous people he's known, he was still very, very humble, down to earth, humble. He loves Jesus, and that's it. All right?